And we're live.
With Paranormal-Spirits, place to come to get our booze on. We talk about the booze, the things that go bump in the night. And I get to do that with all my booze. I'm Mike Black. To my left, my beautiful, talented wife, Alyssa.
Hi.
What, did I need?
I don't know, but you had to think about it, and that's upsetting. And then you couldn't even think of an adjective.
Oh, I could think of some adjectives.
Positive.
Sitting across from me.
Positive adjectives, sir.
Sitting across from me, the lovely and talented John Burkett.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Earthlings.
Greetings, Earthlings. Take me to your leader.
So tonight we're taking you on a story.
Wait, that's your leader? Take me back.
No kidding. Tonight we're doing a story about a haunted, I guess it'd be haunted people, not a haunted house.
Oh, yeah?
Because it was multiple houses. So it was a haunted people, a group, and they went through literally a living hell for, 6 years total. And had all kinds of people come out and try to figure out what was going on, and nobody could really do it. And so anyway, before we get to that, though, let's talk about what we're drinking. What are you drinking, Alyssa?
Lagavulin.
John, what are you drinking?
I don't.
Fortaleza.
Ooh.
Fortaleza.
Because I've had
Choose
some G4 since it's been on sale lately for a very reasonable price. I just bought 2 more bottles tonight.
Of G4?
Yeah.
So good.
And I'm thinking this is the best beverage I've ever put in my mouth, right?
So is this?
But
so
I've
good.
wanted to remember what this tastes like.
And is it better?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
I don't either.
I think G4
I
is
concur
better.
that it is not.
I think Fortaleza has the hype.
Agreed. A cool bottle.
Yeah, not as good as G4.
No, it's not.
Yep. It's
And
a different profile, a little earthier.
It is. Also, it's just not as smooth to me, from what I remember.
I mean, it's pretty smooth, but
Agreed, but G4.
and then I am drinking Lagavulin 16.
16. Is that what I have here?
You do have Lagavulin 16.
you ran out of the other stuff.
Cheers the gods.
The
Yeah.
Don Julio cast stuff.
Yeah, the 1923 special edition.
Did
blah,
we
blah,
have
blah.
that?
Yeah.
20
Not for long.
2023.
Did
Yeah,
I drink
2023.
it?
If you
I'm
had
sorry.
a 1923
Oh, yeah,
one,
that'd be worth
that would
something.
be amazing.
Did I drink it?
You didn't like it, I don't believe. It was, the ABV was too high on it or something.
I liked
It
it.
was over 100 proof. I loved it. It didn't last very long. But the problem is, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit
It's not as
more.
expensive as the other version, which is the Don Julio aged in Lagavulin cast.
No.
It was about $100 more than that Lagavulin.
Yeah, because it was 170 something for the.
I think it's about $250 for the Don Julio
Yeah,
Lagavulin
it was,
cast.
yeah, they're proud of both of them. Either way you go, whether it's whiskey or tequila first or scotch first, doesn't matter. You're going to spend some money.
I am curious about the new Offerman edition of Lagavulin 11 because it's a rum cast.
Cask, I saw that.
And
I haven't made myself do that yet.
Made
For the
yourself.
Offerman. Yeah, because it's like you have to, if you're going to drink the Lagavulin, you have to drink an Offerman at some point. You know, just because it's.
But you know, on Parks and Rec, Ron Swanson only drank 16.
Yeah, right. So there you go. All right, let's get rolling. Let me tell you about what happened starting in about 1984. Deborah Moffat's grandmother-in-law. Say that 3 times fast. No,
Deborah
don't,
Moffat's
don't,
grandmother-in-law,
don't,
Deborah
don't say it.
Moffat's
Mother-in-law. Okay.
Yeah, so it says her grandmother-in-law, she suffered a terrible and debilitating stroke, bless her heart. And as a result, she required round-the-clock care. And the family all pulled together their resources. They wanted to hire somebody that they could trust.
Gosh, this sounds like something going on in my life right now.
Yeah, right? So they pulled the resources together to hire this caretaker. And they hired a neighbor that lived nearby. Was also a family friend. She was good friends with the grandmother-in-law. And it was a middle-aged Guatemalan woman named Juanita. And of course, this arrangement was a good deal for everybody because Juanita was here on a work visa, and by having a steady job, then she could stay in the United States. And
good for her for coming here legally
and making money. And it also helped out the family so that they could have somebody that they could trust there with their grandmother. And what they didn't know about Juanita was that she was an avid practitioner of Santeria, which is a somewhat controversial African diasporic religion.
In a Sublime song.
yeah
Santeria.
Oh, yeah.
Ain't got no crystal ball.
Okay, so
And sorry.
so
I got
anyway,
something for his punk ass.
African diaspora religions, also known as Afro-American religions, are a group of related beliefs that developed in the Americas from traditional African religions and other influences into religions like Voodoo, Rastafari, Dugu, and Santeria.
Hoodoo.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of different flavors of that. So Santeria actually developed in Cuba in the late 19th century, and it was a blend of Yoruba and Catholicism.
Yoruba.
And so anyway, during this, one of the things they offered up to their deities, the Orishas. Orisha, yeah. It's like when I get drunk and try to say your name, Alyssa. Orisha.
Get over here, Orisha. Help me off the floor.
So they would offer up things to these Orishas, which included fruit, liquor, flowers, and even animal sacrifices.
Don't they kind of also worship like Catholic saints, though, too? Like,
Yeah, it's a blending is what it is.
yeah, it's not a bad.
Okay. And in the months, it's highly controversial. How's that? So
You can ask this Santera. So what do they call it? Santera? What do you call it? There's
Santeria.
no. There's a practitioner is called as a name for it, but you can ask them for positive stuff, help with things, or you can pay them enough. Right? I mean, some practitioners might put a curse for you.
that's right. But it is a highly controversial one. It's it's like voodoo and black magic and all that. You have a lot of people that are like naysaying on it. So in the months that followed, the grandmother's recovery didn't go well. Her condition got worse every day. Juanita grew increasingly worried about the grandmother and her own well-being for that matter, because if grandmother passes away, she doesn't have a job and she might lose her visa. She might have to leave the country. And she's worried about that. They're in California, by the way. And so there's a high cost of living, competitive job market. She's got to think about all these things. So Juanita decides to take matters into her own hands. And she casts a spell in hopes of helping everyone out, especially Grandma. So the ritual did not help. Grandma did not get better and passed away just a few weeks later. The family, of course, was devastated by Grandma's death, and as a result, Juanita did lose her job.
Dang it.
So she kind of just disappeared and dropped off the map. Nobody really knows what happened to Juanita after that. Enter Deborah and Bill. Deborah and her husband, Bill, inherited the home and moved in after Grandma's funeral. Now, this is this is her granddaughter, Deborah. And when they first moved in the house, everything was fine. It was quiet. It was normal. But they were expecting a child. And their firstborn came along in 1987. They had a son. Everything changed after that. The dynamics, the energy in the house changed. So Bill was an avid sports memorabilia collector and was especially fond of bobbleheads. Bobbleheads. To the point that he had a complete spare room that was dedicated to collecting bobbleheads. He had shelves, he had cabinets, he had tables set up, and bobbleheads were everywhere. Bill was, I would say, a little fanatical about it. He kept this room locked at all times. Only he had the key to keep everybody out. Wow. I mean,
proud of those toys.
Yeah,
huh?
he's proud of his bobbleheads. Anyway, it's kept locked all the time. So one day, Bill runs into one of his old buddies, and he wants to show off all his bobbleheads. So Deborah, Bill, and his buddy come back to the bobblehead room. And they open it up. When they open up the room, Bill is pissed. All the bobbleheads have been removed from the shelves, the cabinets, the tables, everything.
Damn it.
They are in the middle of the floor.
Are they bobbling?
No, but they're in the shape of a triangle. And so Bill, he's pissed. And he thinks that somebody has snuck in, got his key, opened it up, and pulled a prank on him. And, of course, this, we find out later, it was...
the ghost.
This was not the case. After this incident, there were more bizarre events that occurred, and they kind of started small and just grew after that. Grandma, her room, she had, they didn't change anything after she passed. And Grandma had been a very religious woman, and she kept on her bedside table, she had a statue of Jesus and the Virgin Mary. So one day after the bobblehead incident, Deborah goes into the room for something, and she notices that her husband's underwear is draped over the statue of Jesus that's on the bedside table.
Are these boxers, tighty whities, or boxer briefs?
They're boxers. Yeah. No, I don't know.
Grape
When does it matter?
I don't know. I mean, just for my mental picture.
Oh, okay. Well, paint this picture. You got this old woman's bed, and there's a bedside table, and now you got undies on top of Jesus's head. So it's extremely disrespectful, whatever it be, briefs or
Grape smugglers or
whatever, you know.
Rape smugglers.
Yeah, just banana hammocks or
Even if it's underoos, it's not appropriate.
Spider-Man.
Right. So, well, Bill didn't change in this room, so there was no way his boxers would have been in this room. And he was very close to his grandmother and would never have disrespected her like that by putting his nasty underwear on top of Jesus. So, well, I mean, that's what happened. So the couple, they find this incident strange, but they just kind of blow it off because they got other things to worry about, which is their newborn son. When he's about a month old, they get another strange event. They had been out to dinner at a relative's house, and dinner went on into the evening and on into the night. And finally, they're like, okay, we got to go. We got to get home. They drive home. And when they get home, they walk up to the door. They put their key in, turn the key, and they step inside. They turn the light on, and they see a bizarre symbol that is drawn on the wall. And Deborah describes this as a series of triangles with tails. And I've seen pictures of it, and I'll put them up for the podcast. But it looks like an S underneath a triangle. And similar symbols were found on the walls throughout the house. So every room in the whole house has these symbols, and it looks like it's been drawn on the wall with charcoal or ash or something like that. Again, Bill and Debbie suspect that somebody might be trying to prank them, breaking into their home. However, all the doors and windows were locked. Nothing was missing. And they decide, screw it, let's go to bed. And so they're confused with all this, but they don't know what to do about it. So they go to bed that night. 5 days later, 1 week later, Bill was in his sports collection room. I don't know, the bobblehead room's all I know what to call it. And Deborah was in there cleaning the living room. And as she's cleaning, she looks over at, she's got this shelf of these little keepsakes, knickknacks, and whatnots. And she looks away for a second as she's sweeping. She turns back around, and every one of them on the shelf had been turned around backwards. So all at one time. She goes and tells Bill, and he refuses to believe it, thinking, she must have been mistaken. It was, she was just confused. 1 week after that, they arrived home to find a lamp that was normally set on an end table was in the middle of the living room floor, nothing else out of place. There were no signs of forced entry. So Debbie begins to suspect something beyond their understanding was afoot. And Bill is completely terrified of the paranormal. So he just goes into denial. It didn't happen. It's, this is not what's happening.
Bless him.
So they put the lamp back on the shelf or on the end table there. Bill and Debbie go back into the kitchen. They're talking. They're only in there for a couple of minutes, and they're trying to figure out what kind of rational explanation could there be for this happening. Something reasonable, something logical. And so they come back into the living room like 2 to 3 minutes later. All of the furniture in the living room has been rearranged and stacked up against one wall. And, of course, this occurred silently and within just a couple of minutes. And so at this point, they can't deny that something beyond their comprehension is happening. And Deborah, she's pretty apprehensive about it, but at the same time, she's kind of fascinated. This is kind of cool. We've got a ghost in here and it's doing this and this, Bill, besides, in spite of his fear of the paranormal, has decided that he's going to stop denying what was happening. This is something definitely paranormal, and he wants nothing to do with it, and he's ready to move. He's ready to hop in the car and go, leave everything there, and go get another place to live. So Bill goes outside. He's waiting outside while Debbie places the furniture back to all of the normal places in the living room. And Bill's refused to have anything to do with the activity from that point forward, and essentially going back into denial. After she puts the furniture back, for about the next week, this is kind of like a game for Deborah. And she's trying to communicate with this presence or thing, and she's asking it to move things to prove its existence. And so the presence, the entity, whatever you want to call it, it obliges. So she'll ask it to move something and it'll move it. So this is just like a little game to her. But after 1 week, it just stopped. So there were other things that happened after that. Finally, Bill is becoming increasingly uncomfortable living in this house because he feels like it's always there with him and watching and, listening. And
it is Bill.
Huh?
Because it is Bill.
Yeah, because it is Bill. So anyway, they decide we're going to buy the house next door and we're going to keep this property for a rental property.
Put somebody else through it.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds great.
And that's what they did, to the point that it resulted in basically a revolving door of tenants. Most of them only stayed there a few months. I think the longest anybody stayed there was a year. Bill tells them as they're moving in, every one of them, he mentions that the property could be haunted and people would just laugh at him. They didn't believe it. But then once they got into the house, they're like, oh, deuces, we're out. So they didn't want to have anything to do with that. So as this goes on, they've had several years of renting this home. Bill and Debbie and several other family members decide, hey, we're going to get together. We're going to pool our money and we're going to buy a great big house together. So I guess they've decided they're going to build some kind of freaking commune or something.
It's about a compound,
there's
like the Kennedy compound.
There's Bill and Debbie. They have 2 kids now. There's Bill's mother and father, and then 2 other people that I'm not sure. I think it was cousins, but I could never find it. I looked. I couldn't find who the other 2 people were. So anyway, they're getting ready to move, and it's like they're down to the last days. They've got everything packed up, and Deborah and the other woman heard an explosion. They were in one of the rooms packing.
Jeez.
They hear this explosion from the kitchen, from the kitchen while they're in there. They hear this. They go back there, and everything is off the shelves. The shelves are in the floor, splinters. This is in the kitchen now. So while they're in the kitchen going, what the hell happened? They hear another crash. They go back to the room, and this one came from the bedroom that they had just left. They go back in there, and the windows have all blown in. Every window in that room had exploded inward. Glass shards cover all the boxes. Deborah and her cousin, they said, we're out, and they left the boxes behind. They didn't even go back and ever get them. So at this point, Deborah realizes that this is a force that they're dealing with. It's not benevolent. It's not, a fun ghost to play with. This is something hostile and evil. So she gets to the new house, and it's not very far away. She drove there, and she is still she's rattled. So she spends the rest of the day packing away and unpacking and trying to settle herself down. So the first several days in the house were very quiet, calm. The family unpacked, settled in. This thing, entity, whatever you want to call it, it comes back with a vengeance. And so they get plagued by this malevolent force that had stalked them before. And so it's like it's pissed off and it's back. And this time, it's really looking to do some damage. So the family knows what this is, and they're like, oh my God, we got to do something here. And at least some of them. Now others are like, no, we can't do anything. We can't bring anybody in to help us. And so it was it didn't make a lot of sense. And they never made their problems public. The only people that they reached out to were professionals, or they reached out to the church for help. And Jessica, which was Deborah's daughter, she tells this later. She says, my mom explained that at first my grandmother, Lee, insisted that they stay quiet because other people would think they were crazy. But she later confessed she feared the entity was punishment for God for the sins of her father, who had been involved with La Cosa Nostra.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What was their last name? Or his last name?
I don't know, because this is from Moffat, would be one of them.
Well, that's definitely not a...
not
100% Italian from both sides of your family, so they could trace you all the way back to the old country.
So they all agree that this problem is beyond their capacity to handle it. And the entity begins to isolate the different family members. And so they stop having guests over because they don't want to spread the disturbance anywhere. They stop going out except for essentials. One incident occurred when Deborah and Bill had returned from dinner at a friend's house, and they get home, and as they walk into the kitchen, there on the kitchen table, they find the friend's wallet on their kitchen table, the guy that they had just been at his house. And so this kind of freaks them out because they think that this entity is telling them, hey, I can get to all your friends too, and I can hurt them. So, and how do you call your buddy up and say, oh, John, I was just at your house, and I don't know how the hell it happened, but I got home and your wallet's on my table.
So you better bring my wallet back.
John's like, bitch, I know you just stole my wallet. You need to bring it back. So I don't know what the hell You're
going to be really disappointed when you go use that debit card.
So Deborah ends up convincing the family to visit a local psychologist, and she says, okay, maybe we're all experiencing mass hysteria. They're going at logical reasons that this could happen.
It's funny because it's usually the dad that doesn't believe any of it.
Right. And he does. They go to a psychologist that's based in Rancho Cucamonga, California.
Cucamonga.
Mm-hmm. So he was initially apprehensive about this. But anyway, after meeting the family, the psychologist concluded something strange was happening, but he couldn't help him in any way. And so the psychologist advises him to seek help from a parapsychologist or religious institution, somebody that's an expert in paranormal phenomena. Most of Bill's family was Catholic. So, of course, they seek the church out and say, hey, we need some help. There's something going on in our house. So the church agrees to send a priest out to bless the home. It took several weeks before the priest actually made it out there. And he comes in the foyer there, walks in, and he sprinkles a little holy water here, a little holy water there, and then made a sign of the cross towards the hallway. And he says, okay, I'm all done here. And Deborah's like, hey, aren't you like supposed to go into every room? He says, oh no. He says, this will be sufficient. He says, I have to go. And they said that he was visibly upset and even maybe scared or something. And so after the priest tells him this, they ask him, well, we don't feel like this is right. We feel like that, you should go through the whole house here because, something's going on. And the priest is very dismissive. He turns to Deborah and says, women, when they get a little older, they tend to get a little crazy.
Wow.
Now, excuse me, I have to go. Hey.
Okay, dude.
I didn't say that. I'm just telling you what he said. So, and that's what Deborah said that he said. So the priest exits the house and seeming pretty scared. The family is just like flabbergasted by this response, and they were expecting help. They were expecting him to come in and bless the house, and they feel like that, the treatment that they got was a bit subpar. Well, Bill's mother, Lee, the grandmother that's there now, she is the most religious of them, or the most Catholic, I guess. And she was crushed by the church's response and was never the same after that. She felt like the church had really let them down, and she was pissed off about it. So this entity starts feeding off of her negativity and ends up tormenting her and focusing most of the bad things that happened then from then on out are happening to Lee. It would destroy her belongings, made her shoes disappear, destroyed her purse, tore up credit cards, her license. And if it didn't destroy something, it would hide it. Lee had very bad eyesight, and the entity took and smashed her glasses and would manifest to her as this massive black mist, often touching or abusing her. The demon ended up developing an obsession with knives. And of course, Lee, again, bore the brunt of all the activity. Knives would appear stuck in walls, under chairs, and in upright positions under pillows, where it had been stabbed in from the bottom of the pillow and then laid on the bed, so that if you lay down, you
get poked,
cut yourself. Yeah. Here's the weird part: the knives didn't even belong to the family, and they didn't know where they were coming from. They would these knives would just show up. At one point, it left a spear, and it was telling them, and later on I'll explain how it tells them, but it left a spear head there, and it was trying to get them to sacrifice Lee so that it could cross into our world. The ceremonial spear was taken to the Los Angeles Natural History Museum. They dated it at over 250 years old. but it was pure iron, had zero rust, zero oil, or anything to keep it from rusting. And even now, and I listened to a podcast where somebody actually has it. I think it's the Deborah Moffat. I was listening to a podcast that she was on. She had it in her hand, handed it to the dude doing the podcast, and it still has no rust.
I'd sell that son bitch.
No rust. And so completely made of iron, zero rust, which makes absolutely no sense. It's 250 years old and it has no rust. And most things that are 250 years old that are made of iron are rusted through. You know, I mean, they've deteriorated to the point that they fall apart now.
Unless you maintain them.
By keeping it protected with oil and...
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any oil. So...
or just keep it indoors,
It's still going to rust. Unless you're... God, I guess if you were out in the desert with zero humidity or,
I've seen some really old swords, like
sure,
1,000-year-old plus swords that are still in reasonably good condition that came out of bogs and stuff,
The ones that are in bogs are not in reasonably
Well, I mean,
condition.
you can still tell exactly what it is, I've seen some Viking ones that are
But covered in rust, though.
they're rusty, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This has
You
no
can
rust
clean
on
it
it.
up,
So, and they placed it originating from the Kuba Kingdom, also known as the Kingdom of Bakuba or Bushango.
In Africa?
In a traditional kingdom in Central Africa, the Kuba Kingdom flourished between the 17th and the 19th centuries in the heart of what would be now the modern Democratic Republic of the Congo.
DRC.
Yeah. So the Moffats they just feel defenseless against this thing. They can't do anything with it, and they can't defeat it. And how do you defeat something that should not exist? So they begin communicating with this thing. It starts writing on the mirrors. And the first message to Lee said, "No escape." And this message appeared after the family returned from grocery shopping one day. They go back there, and here's this thing. So just to make sure it wasn't a family prank, they cleaned up the mirror. They all waited for it. After 15 minutes, they re-entered the bathroom to find, "Don't go into the attic," written on the mirror. So Lee froze in her tracks, recognizing there was a nickname, and I couldn't find out what it was. I looked, I couldn't find it. But it was in this message. It was a nickname that only her long deceased sister had used to reference her. So it was, but this thing knew her nickname somehow. And these messages just continue over and over and on, and they're becoming more sadistic and controlling, abusive, hateful, and it would be whole lines of communication that's been put on this class, and the messages are conveying a human-like intelligence when it's leaving the message form. So for the next year, the family believed basically they were being held hostage by this demonic entity. And they would ask it questions. They would write the questions on the mirror. The mirror would never respond to the questions, but it would give them, it would tell them things, demanding certain things of them. They would have to ask permission to leave the house. And if they didn't, their car would break down. The car would receive damages like broken windshields, headlights. The engine failed on them one time. So out of frustration, Bill's father asks the entity its name, hoping to understand and stop all this torment, right? So the name Prince was scribbled on the mirror. And after... No, not the artist formerly known as Prince, but
The sign.
Not Prince Rogers Nelson.
no. After it told them his name was Prince, there was this crashing and bashing in the living room. So they run in there, and there's all these items that are broken and symbols, the ones with the triangles with the squirrely tails on it, are scribbled all over the walls and floors. There were places where it was burnt into the wall. So, and this went on and on and on. Every day starts the same. You get up, you straighten up whatever this thing has knocked over in the middle of the night, because something's happening every day. It followed them. If they would try to leave the house, it would follow them, and to the point it would go out to dinner with them. They would go to a restaurant and they would find the waiter's name tag. They'd look up and there'd be sitting in the middle of their table. One person ordered a steak one time, and seconds after it was served, before everybody has their food out, there's a big bite out of the steak where something had taken a chunk out of it.
That's not cool.
Don't mess with my meat.
Don't mess with my meat.
But it was almost like it was trying to remind them of its existence when they would go places. They would try to, just get a break from it. So they would go stay in a hotel overnight or something, just hole everybody up in a hotel, and they'd get there, and this thing had drawn its symbols on the hotel windows, and would cause havoc like that. And they decided that they could either go out and chance being, ridiculed in public for this, or they could just stay at home and endure it alone in the house. So they're like, okay, we're imprisoned in our own home and we have to get help. So they start reaching out to reputable people, organizations. So these are some of the ones that actually went out to the house to try to help them. Lloyd Auerbach and his investigation team, the Office of Paranormal Investigations. Lord Auerbach was on the core faculty of the graduate parapsychology program at John F. Kennedy, where he received a master's degree in parapsychology. While on the faculty, he served as the public information and media consultant to the American Society for Psychical Research. So he's a bigwig. And then you got Dr. Evelyn Paglini. And Jessica talks about her interaction with Paglini. Jessica was Deborah's daughter. During her investigation of our home in 1989, Dr. Paglini informed my mother that she believed that for the entity to be so entrenched in our lives, a family member was giving it permission to remain. Years after Dr. Paglini's visit, my mother discovered my grandfather, whom I had never known, wiping away conversations he was having with the entity from the bathroom mirror.
Like clearing his browser history.
Yes. In a paranormal sense. Shockingly, my mother told me that my grandfather was urging the entity to kill my grandmother so that he would gain control of their finances, including access to a large inheritance my grandmother's parents had left her.
Wow.
Yeah. So confronted by this grand betrayal, my grandmother demanded that he leave the house and our lives. My grandmother eventually moved out, or my grandfather eventually moved out of the state, and we never saw him again. My mom said that although she and my grandmother were relieved to see him go, my dad was traumatized by this turn of events and horrified by the man his own father revealed himself to be. There was Christopher Chacon and his investigation team.
Chacon.
Mm-hmm. He was considered an expert on the scientific investigation of supernatural, including exorcisms. He had witnessed and been in place for 1,000 exorcisms. There's an S on there. Mm-hmm. Thelma Moss. Remember her?
I remember her and Louise, yeah, but
Doris. No, not Thelma and Louise. Thelma Moss. You remember Thelma Moss? Doris Byther, Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
She was head of the parapsychology.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Thelma Moss
How come
sent.
University of North Texas didn't offer this? I would have taken that. Would have what I would have majored in. It's not offered everywhere.
You didn't go to the right school.
You have to go to the big schools. So Thelma sends Carrie Gaynor. Remember Barry and Carrie?
Yeah,
Barry and Carrie.
Yep, she sent Carrie Gaynor out to, who also did the Sally House.
This was the Entity people, right?
And
movie,
the Entity,
yeah.
Carrie, he was there for that. The San Pedro haunting,
Yep.
he investigated that one.
That's right.
So the guy, he's legit. And they sent him out there. Various religious organizations of differing faiths were contacted. They even tried having magicians, shamans, Wiccans, and even Zach.
No,
I'm kidding.
Okay.
It wasn't Zach.
That's what they needed. Well, not Zach. They just needed a Ghost Adventures house call
Oh, is that what they needed?
with Zach over the.
Actually, they had
FaceTime.
Ed and Lorraine Warren come out.
Oh, so it must have been
Of
a
course
demon.
they did.
It was a demon.
But they didn't do him
Always
any
a
good because
demon with them.
nobody could get rid of this demon. It was there to stay. And it's gotten to the point now that the demon has, or the entity, or whatever you want to call it, has decided that the upstairs, the second floor, belongs to it.
Oh.
The family is not allowed up there anymore. So they're going through this agony, and the whole family now sleeps together in the living room, like we've seen so many times on these, where they have these horrible hauntings, and they're all sleeping together in the living room for safety. And Deborah ended up going upstairs one night to retrieve some medication for her mother. And she grabs the medication, turns around to leave. She hears a growling from behind her. And as she turns, she sees this creature's hand behind her there. She believes that was Prince or whatever, the entity. That was its true form. So Lee, one night, experiences intense torture when she is lifted off the floor by her throat in the kitchen pantry until she loses consciousness. Her husband rushes to her aid, and she survived the ordeal, suggesting that Prince had the power to take a human life, but chose not to. Deborah storms into the upstairs bathroom to demand answers from Prince, who communicated through the mirror writing. And he agreed to stop bothering the rest of the family, but claimed that Lee had been promised to him hundreds of years ago. So I don't know if that was some deal somebody made. You can have one of my great grandkids or something. But anyway, that's what the demon told her. That's what she reports.
They need some Palo Santo wood.
Get him some yew wood. Or hawthorn, or hawthorn steak.
On
or
Ghost
something.
Adventures house calls, when they have to do, they always take Palo Santo, and Jay and Billy go around the house with Palo Santo wood, burning it.
Oh, they do? Not the sage?
Not sage, Palo Santo wood.
Gotcha. So Deborah ends up deciding that she is going to call this thing Mr. Entity. And
So Mr. original.
Entity, I know, right? And deny it any power over her. So this thing has no power over her anymore. Throughout the ordeal, the family experienced all the common paranormal manifestations. You got the putrid odors, knocking and banging, things being thrown, tossed, the writing, of course. But they also experienced an infestation in the office. In this, they say, indicates a more powerful entity's presence. The office suddenly had a rat problem. All of a sudden, they've got rats. Lasts for 2 weeks, and then they're gone. At one point, the entity possessed one of the family's dogs. Didn't last very long, but the dog died like a week after that. So You remember the Smurls, where the dog was assaulted by the demon.
Yep.
So despite years of assistance from paranormal investigators, religious leaders, shamans, occult magicians, and more, Prince continued to plague the family. Eventually, Prince simply vanishes. Debbie and Bill destroyed many of the photos of the entity, storing only a few in the attic. A few, but it's a lot. They stopped speaking about their ordeal for fear of its return, but it hasn't come back. Deborah became an author and a spiritual advisor, and sharing her knowledge to help others. She ends up writing a book called Unwelcome, the true story of the Moffat family haunting, and that was published in 2015. You can buy it on Amazon right now. So for 6 years, they were terrorized by this demon, and the demon claiming that Lee Moffat, or I think Lee was short for Lena, was promised to him as a sacrifice hundreds of years ago, and the entity had come to collect her. And there was no place for them to run or hide. And it's unclear whether Prince was a demon or a spirit or something pretending to be more than it was, but it was obviously powerful and had the ability to be destructive and disruptive. Debbie believed that it might have been a familial pact that had taken place. I won't give you my soul, but I'll give you one of my grandkids,
That's awful.
Hey, but hell, her husband was trying to talk the demon into offing her, so.
No, I get it. I'm just saying that's awful.
So.
But it never got that soul.
We don't know, did it? During an interview with Art Bell, one of the guests that he had on there identified a symbol associated with Prince, or Mr. Entity, or whatever you want to call it, as one that he encountered when he was in the army in Afghanistan, and it was known as a symbol for the jinn. And which the jinn is considered one of the leaders of the devils and thrown out of heaven for refusing to prostrate.
You said prostate.
I did say prostate. Prostrate before Adam.
Refusing to receive prostate massage.
Yeah, I'm not getting a prostate massage. It's also he was also known as the father of bitterness, which would explain Prince's power.
But it's also the genie. Like a genie is jinn.
Right. That's our Americanized version of it. It's the Eva. No, what's her name? Barbara Eden.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's your genie.
Oh man, Barbara Eden. I had the biggest crush on her.
Did you?
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so that's the Moffat family and their story of all their suffering. Now, if you want to wait, coming out, Blumhouse is developing the unscripted series with ITV America's Good Caper, and they're for a reality show, and there's also a possibility that they're going to make a scripted series and or film about the Moffat family somewhere down the line.
That'll be good. Blumhouse does pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
That's Danny McBride's part of that company too.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Kenny effing Powers.
Yeah. Yeah, but they do make good shows.
Yeah.
I've watched several. What do you think?
I don't like that at all.
You didn't?
I don't like the idea of a demon taking over the entire top half of a house.
I mean,
because Granny sold her soul, or sold her kid's soul, her grandkid's souls.
But then it just left.
Like,
yeah,
why?
So was it Granny or was it Granddad somewhere down the line?
Well,
whoever.
Shit, it's somebody familial, and that's messed up.
It goes back to that whole Faustian thing, where you sell your soul.
Yeah, but a hellhound comes to collect that. You got hellhound on your tail, like Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
Allegedly, when you sell it, it's a hellhound that comes to collect. By the way, the Winchesters defeated both a hellhound and a gin.
Did they?
They did.
Thank God. That's so funny.
Well, we were talking about Dean Winchester.
Yeah,
earlier,
I know. We were.
About, what's his name? Jensen Ackles.
Yeah. That is one good-looking dude. I mean, I don't want to go take a
handsome man.
I don't want to take a long, warm shower with him, but that is a good-looking man.
Which one?
Jensen Ackles.
He's
the one we were talking about.
The young, not the young.
He's the older. Shorter. He's the older brother.
He's the older brother.
Supernatural.
In Supernatural, yeah.
He's the wisecracking ladies' man that,
Yeah.
He's
got that look.
He's got that kind of Cary Grant kind of thing about him where all the guys want to be him. All the women want to be with him.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. When I was watching him on Tracker, which I haven't seen him since season 2 of The Boys, where he plays Soldier Boy on The Boys, but I was watching him on season. I was like, his hair is amazing. Look at that jawline.
I do.
Not in a gay way.
He's got great hair.
Just like I was like, man.
That jawline.
I was thinking, man, if I could look like that.
Oh, dude.
I mean, he's got to be 40. I mean, he's not that far behind. He's, probably 40 years old.
I think he's older than that.
Yeah, he's probably older than that.
So
isn't he from Dallas?
He is.
I think he's from Dallas.
He's from Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Jensen Ackles.
Yeah, Jensen Ackles. And
just,
I thought it was interesting that when I first started watching Supernatural,
Jensen
Ackles. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started watching Supernatural, I thought it was interesting that he was like the same height as his younger brother,
Jared Padalecki.
Yeah, Jared Padalecki. And then by the end of the show, Jared Padalecki has turned into this Sasquatch.
Yeah. And he's not working like Jensen Ackles has been. He's at some high profile roles.
Turned 46.
Oh, so he's only
10 years.
1978.
He's 8 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, 8 years ago, I did not have a jawline like that.
No.
30 years
I've
ago,
never
I didn't
looked.
have a jawline
I've never
like
looked
that.
as good as he does. I mean,
that
the
is
dude is just.
That's some
March
seriously
1st,
good genetics.
1978 in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, I knew he was from Tech. Yeah, not the fanboy or man crush.
Hey,
but
dude,
Jesus.
it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good-looking dude.
He is.
I agree. Yes.
Do
You concur?
I love.
do.
I love that look over there. She goes, "I agree."
And I always found, like, even on the
You need to watch. You're slobbering.
I'm
you're drooling.
drooling.
You're drooling a little bit.
I
Back.
found Jared Padalecki's character a little annoying, but I always liked Dean. I can't remember
Dean
the other
was
brother.
cool,
Dean's
though.
cool as hell.
He didn't give a shit. He'd go whoop somebody's ass.
Mhm.
That's what I liked about him. And
He was
Jared
cracking wise 1 second, shoving a cheeseburger, hitting on the waitress. The
Yeah.
next minute, he's all serious.
How many seasons were in that show?
Too many.
Jesus,
It
way more
got-
than I watched.
Okay, well that says 16.
16. So I
I,
made it.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
I said 17.
I think
I
I made
think you
it-
said 15.
I may have made it till about 10, maybe. I
Actually,
don't
this
know,
says
whatever.
15 seasons, but something else I looked at said 16. So we're 15, 16.
Whatever. Yeah, I thought it was
somewhere in
15,
there.
but yeah, I made it.
I
First
think I
episode
watched
date.
7.
First episode date, September 13th, 2005.
Yeah, I think I watched
The
it to
first-
season 7.
Somewhere between 7 to 8 to 10 seasons. I don't know. They jumped the shark with the black goo stuff.
That's where they lost
That's
me.
where I stopped watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, but up until that, I was all on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good.
It's a great show.
It was.
The yellow-eyed demon,
So let's talk about the places that you can see all of our media. You can come see us on YouTube if you're listening to this on a podcast at 3B Paranormal on YouTube. Make sure that you get there and you like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right down there. There's one over there by
Oh,
John's.
subscribe's over there. You're right.
Yeah, it's right over here. And then there's one
Likes
over by
over here.
John's arm. If you're listening to us on YouTube and watching us, then you can listen to us on a podcast at Paranormal-Spirits. If you're listening to Xbox, Twitter, or Instagram, or not Xbox, X, Insta, TikTok, you can go to paranormal-spirits.com and you can click on that stuff there and see all our pictures, and go to our Facebook page, Booze with Benefits, and Go to our
koozies.
well, if you go to our website, you can go to, and that's at paranormal-spirits.com. You can go to Boozy's Boutique, and you can buy you a Boozy's koozie or a Boozy coffee cup or a Boozy blanket someday. I guess we'll have those because you want a Boozy blanket
Someday.
Yeah, I don't want to see the blankets at all until at least Halloween.
Until Halloween.
Yeah,
when it
that's
starts
too
getting
hot.
cool.
Yeah, November. That's when it starts not being the surface of the freaking sun. Yeah,
Okay.
The
So
humidity has started early this year.
it's awful.
let me leave you with this thought. If you are listening to that podcast and you're engrossed in the story, or you're watching us on YouTube, you are completely unaware of that thing that is standing right behind you. Night, y'all.
All right.
Nice.
It says that Jared had a lucky
Yeah, the one day they